Salute, Knicks Nation. Welcome into the post-game live CT with my brother EJ here. Friday night Knicks NBA Cup game. Knicks on the road. So much to talk about. EJ, great to see you. How you feeling?
Doing all right, my friend CT. Good to be here on Nick's Buzz. Shout out to everyone who's buzzing. You didn't have to be here, but you chose to be here, and so for that, CT and I are immensely grateful. Heartbreak of a loss for the New York Knicks, particularly because it's early in the season and it's a tough schedule at the beginning of this particular year. Whenever you have an opportunity to steal a game, which was the case tonight, and you come up short, it hits a little bit differently. So, although, I don't know if there are many fans tonight who thought it possible to hang tough with the Milwaukee Bucks, particularly with Dame Lillard as an amazing addition during the offseason. The Knicks hung tough. Jalen Brunson balled out of his mind. I believe he ended up with either 43 or 45 points tonight. But that wasn't enough. That wasn't enough. So, the opening night of the championship cup, I don't even know what they call it, the coaches cup, the commissioners cup, the cup that, when you're in a bracket with the Milwaukee Bucks, you're probably not going to win. But nevertheless, there were some positives tonight, but it was a difficult defeat. What are your thoughts tonight, CT?
Yeah, likewise. Not overly surprised. I'm kind of feeling like this is how it was going to go. A tough loss. The positives are Brunson looked amazing, and he's basically a guy who steps up every time the game is huge. Talking about playoffs, talking about early adversity in the season, talking about a national TV game, NBA Cup, like you said. We're still getting in the groove of it. The court looked ugly. Let's just say that. But missing RJ Barrett, just starting from the top. It wasn't a great start to this game, EJ. The offense actually got better as the game went along. But missing RJ Barrett, I think so far he's been the best New York Knick in terms of consistency. Obviously, two amazing games from Jalen Brunson now is kind of evened the playing field. Obviously, Julius Randle, we'll talk about him in depth tonight, but he deferred more, quickly got involved. I like how the offense was looking late. So, yeah, for me, the result sucks. The Knicks are 2-4, but the schedule's been really bad. So, what's your initial impressions in terms of the result, given the fact that the schedule's been really bad for the New York Knicks or tough?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot that we could talk about, even though this is a defeat. There is so much that we can glean from this particular loss tonight. I would say one of the things, and I think one of the reasons why you come to Nick's Buzz, the reason why you hang out with your boy CT and me, your boy EJ, is because you want intelligent conversation. And I think that part of the intelligent conversation, part of the intelligent dissection of tonight's game is you have to talk about the Milwaukee Bucks. One of the things that we saw with respect to our New York Knicks was in the first quarter, I think that there was an extent to which the Knicks were afraid of the length of the Milwaukee Bucks. Milwaukee is a long team. Milwaukee presents a lot of obstacles, particularly when you're a team that likes to drive and dive into the paint. They present a lot of challenges in that respect. Brooke Lopez really thought that it was the summertime and was throwing a block party as if he was standing in the middle of 125th Street and St. Nicholas. It was scary, and obviously Giannis is Giannis. There's a reason why he has the moniker Greek Freak, and I think that got into the heads at the start of the game. But one of the things that you take away and you say, although we lost, this is a positive. Quentin Grimes balled out the first half of the game. I mean, it's one of perhaps the best halves that we've seen out of Quentin Grimes this in his entire Knicks career. But the length of the Milwaukee Bucks, Dame Lillard being Dame Lillard. Dame Lillard is, this is what we mean by having a superstar talent, someone whose offense does not quit, someone whose offense, even in the fourth quarter, it just shows up. It's never absent. And likewise, I know at some point we'll probably talk about Julius Randle. Shout out to Gerard B. That was a really funny line. Gerard B. wrote in the chat. Um, Julius Randle officially on a milk carton, and I know that New York City is not happy right now.
Yeah, most definitely. Whilst he came alive a little bit late, was resting. but something tells me he's not 100% right. I know it's low hanging fruit. Randall's absolutely looked poor, struggled with shooting. Coming into tonight, he was 2 of 16 in the paint. EJ, let that sink in. We'll look at the stats more tonight. His shooting performance and the box score got it already. But also, yeah, he had the worst overall field goal percentage on, I think, 75 attempts on volume shooting. He had the worst start to an NBA season over the games since 2000, Jim Jackson. So since the turn of the
Oof.
century,
Oof.
he's had the worst shooting start in volume. So yeah, Julius Randle. Again, this isn't the Randle we know, and we know he's inefficient, but I just feel like something's not right with him. But the body language, EJ, is something that people have the most issue with. You can live and die with the missed shots and things like that, but the energy, the pouting, the body language. What's your concern level with that factoring in the Knicks start?
I think the play that epitomizes the concern that you're hearing with respect to the collective Knicks body was after, I think it was Jalen Brunson who scored the three that put us ahead 104-103. Or it could have been 103-101 rather. The defensive lapse that took place in terms of just seeing several Knicks players lacking the energy to really cover. And from there, you have Dame Lillard hit that three. And I think emblematic of that lack of energy was Julius Randle. Emblematic of that was just seeing his body language in terms of not being able to run out to cover his man. Um, I think that Julius that we've seen from time to time, that's the one that really throws off and really turns off the Knicks faithful, a portion of the body. There are obviously those who are dogmatic in their defense with regards to Julius Randle, but there are those who are kind of those fans who, they struggle to commit to seeing Julius Randle as a beloved star, all star for the New York Knicks. And, tonight when you're struggling with your shot, when you're struggling um, to really make a difference. And you have such a close game against an upper echelon team in the Eastern Conference, and it's within your grasp as being one of the best players on the team. That leads to more intense scrutiny of your performance. And if your continence, if your disposition, if your affect is somewhat questionable, it's going to lead to more questions, particularly again, because we're now in the age of, there's Knicks Buzz and 4,722. And that's going to be one of my gigs now. I'm just going to randomly create how many podcasts there are now. But there's so many podcasts now, and every one of them are discussing Julius Randle's affect.
Most definitely, man. It's going to continue. We hit on the positives. Obviously, Jalen Brunson does what we know he's capable of. Fatigue came in late in the end, but that's the biggest disappointment. When a night when we got Brunson's breaking out of his slump, we didn't get anything close to an All-Star, All-NBA Julius Randle. Not even a semblance of it. But yeah, the positive Quentin Grimes did step up, quickly help late. But yeah, with this kind of Randle's play, factoring in everything, and missing RJ Barrett, that's where my concerns now lie in winning games. Like, the Randle struggling is obviously a huge factor, but we need to chalk up wins early in the year, right? Even if Randle's having an up and down night, but we can still get wins. We can figure the rest out later. But with this kind of Randle and no Barrett, I'm going to struggle to see us winning games against anyone outside of the cellar dwellers. Is that how you feel now?
I mean, the fact that you're asking me the question and the fact that we're actually, who would have thought 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, that we would have been discussing RJ Barrett being not just the X factor, but being the factor that is deciding games at this point. When we're talking about the Knicks in the past week and a half, there are at least two or three games that were, I mean, two games that were within our grasp, including this one. And so we don't know the extent to which he's injured. We don't know the extent in terms of his return time, the timetable. And this was already going to be a difficult stretch. This was always going to be a stretch, particularly the amount of back to backs, the amount of travel early on in the season, the early part of the season. This has just been my theory recently. The early first 15 games of any NBA season, 15 to 20 games, now in the modern NBA, it's like extended preseason. And so you throw in an unhealthy RJ. You throw in the fact that this is the stretch of the year where teams are still getting acclimated. I mean, the fact that Milwaukee coming into this game was 2-2, who would have thought that? But that's what happens in the league now, where the teams need an extra 10, 15 games to really get into gear. These games are really important, and we've seen this, for the last 5 or 6 seasons with the Knicks, is that when it comes to you know up moving up the playoff ladder, and we're trying to figure out, why are we a game out? Why are we 2 games out? Why are we a game and a half out with 10 left to play? It's those early games where you had a shot to win, and something that you could have controlled did not go your way, or you did not manifest it, you did not make it happen. And so that's really the concern. You don't want a poor start to hamper what many of us thought would be a 3 seed or possibly a 4 seed in May. So this is really the concern.
Yeah, I feel you on that, man. As I pulled up the schedule, first of the NBA Cup games, that's the least of my concerns in terms of us getting through. Milwaukee, the team, the favorite, I think now to get through. We've got Washington, we've got Miami and Charlotte at home. But yeah, I think RJ Barrett's start to the year has been super encouraging. Brunson tonight, I think people can breathe a bit of a sigh of relief in terms of I think you said it. Yeah, the start of the season's been an extended preseason for him, and I think most of Knicks Nation felt confident that Brunson's going to break out of a slump at any minute. But yeah, with the Julius Randle factor, that's just it's going to continue to echo right through till Madison Square Garden against the Clippers with James Harden coming in. I'll get your thoughts on that big trade with the Sixers and the Clippers. But yeah, Victor Wembanyama after that. The world's been abuzz since his 38 piece last night, defeating the one of the Western Conference favorites, the Phoenix Suns. So, yeah, games aren't going to be easy. There's more parity in the East. And, yeah, Knicks Nation, definitely the concern levels have gone up right now. But we have some ballers, Dante DiVincenzo, I felt, stepped up tonight. Josh Hart looked a lot more like Josh Hart. How did you see the bench tonight?
The bench definitely stepped up. I mean, when you have your starting four, your all-star starting forward, really seeming not to be himself tonight, points have to be made up. The fact that the Knicks scored 110 points tonight, when the other night against Cleveland, we barely cracked the 80s, low 90s. So the fact that you're now plus 15 in terms of offense from the previous night, that's indicative of what the bench was able to do. I think that we saw a couple plays tonight where we saw that Nova connection, almost that Nova telepathy, where you see plays between Josh Hart and Dante DiVincenzo, where they know where they like to be on the floor, this comfort that they have. The other thing that you saw tonight, which was really, really encouraging in terms of your bench unit, is that they play with a kind of freedom and pace that is not necessarily a hallmark of a Tom Thibodeau offense. And that was particularly encouraging. I've gotten used to, and I think all of us have gotten used to, when it comes to Tom Thibodeau, Knicks offenses, they tend to be slower, although we always are talking about he wants to push the pace. He wants to push the pace. What we did see tonight with Josh Hart, with Dante DiVincenzo, with Emmanuel Quickly, who also had his moments tonight, there was a speed at which they were playing tonight that was somewhat encouraging, because if you can get easy fast break points, particularly against the team's second unit, and that's the big thing. There's a reason why each team there, you see ebbs and flows in terms of how quarters play out, particularly the second quarter, where you tend to have more of the second units of both squads playing. If you can take advantage of that, that's what you need to do. And that's one of the advantages we do have, is we do have players that add to our depth. And so if we can't win against starting rosters, we better make do with what we have in terms of our second unit, and trying to score and accumulate as many points as possible.
Yeah, for real, EJ, and especially Mitch Hartenstein, been one of the shining lights for the New York Knicks start to the year, the center rotation tonight. Mitchell Robinson at some point barely had any field goal attempts, but had like 10, 11 rebounds. They just couldn't. I know Brook Lopez does well shutting him off in the paint. Giannis's length, they just couldn't get the lob to Mitch, but it didn't hamper his effort. Mitch was running the floor like a gazelle, 6 offensive rebounds once again, 9 defensive, 15 total. I think that's the second game in a row Mitchell Robinson's had 15 plus rebounds, and of course he's my starting 5 fantasy center. So I'm loving those rebounds Mitch is getting me, but try to get me a little bit more points, you know. Um, but
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, man. But yeah, Grimes stepped up. Hart quickly. DiVincenzo still couldn't hit that big three. Like, I'm still waiting for that huge Dante moment where he hits that three where we really need it. He's been a little iffy handling the ball. Uh, yeah, I still feel like we're not even getting anything close to DiVincenzo's potential. How are you seeing his start?
No, I feel the same way. I feel like we haven't had a signature moment yet. We haven't had a signature shot that takes everyone's breath away, particularly at the Garden. But I also think that's a function of, this team still rounding into shape. I think it's still a function of, Dante DiVincenzo is supposed to be your what, fifth option at best, behind, your top three, and then maybe an Emmanuel quickly, not even maybe Emmanuel quickly, definitely an Emmanuel quickly. And so the first 4 games of the season, going into this fifth game, you could argue that with a Jalen Brunson who was unsteady, with a Julius Randle who's been continuously unsteady, that hampers the games of a Dante DiVincenzo because you know Julius is gonna jack up shots. He's gonna force shots. Jalen, first 3 4 games, jacking up shots. There then creates a lack of flow in the offense, and so that lack of flow will hamper your second unit guys because they're not getting as many touches. They're not getting into rhythm. I think what we saw tonight was a little bit more rhythm from Dante DiVincenzo. I think that's another thing that we saw with Quentin Grimes. Quentin Grimes, like there was rhythm to his shots. There was rhythm to his shot selections. There were a couple of shots that he forced. So, for example, that heat check in the first quarter where he was shooting up from like I think 26 or 27 feet deep. But for the most part, I think we'll see Dante round into better form if and when Julius and Jalen play more consistently, because it'll be more in the flow of an offense, hopefully.
Yeah, we'll get on to Tibbs' offense. Yeah, the chat got opinions on that. Yeah, it was a lot of dribble handoff, tough looks. That's how we can compete with the best of teams. I know our offense does look a lot better when against teams with less length than the Milwaukee Bucks. But 10 turnovers tonight, like I'll live with that absolutely. Like if I told you, EJ, we only had 10 turnovers, we're lucky to really be in the game, given the first quarter. I think Josh Hart pushing the break. We got some obviously 15-7 fast break points. That was a huge win tonight. A tick. Second chance points we won. That helped us stay in the game. And our points in the paint we dominated. It took Giannis to miss 3 free throws for us to really get that chance. It took Brook Lopez to miss multiple layups. And of course, the spread shooting, like I said, to salute Milwaukee. They've had a fairly bumpy start to the season. I wasn't that impressed with them tonight. Like I said, if we get a good Julius or an RJ in this game, we could have really snatched this game. So I'm frustrated as any Knicks fan with the result and the record right now, the way we're playing. But to not play your best basketball and to still be in games, that gives me some hope that we're going to get back on track. We're going to get back to 500. Hopefully, I get everyone healthy. What's your sentiment now, sort of heading into next week with just 2 games next week? Finally, this crazy schedule has settled down.
I will say, like, there are some things that, if you consider what happened tonight, it'll give you some positive feelings with regards to what's going to transpire next week. Tonight's game, like, if we're going to do a closer dive into it, before we talk about next week, there are a couple of things that really factored into tonight's loss. The fact that Giannis had 7 turnovers, I think 7 or 8 turnovers tonight, but also was able to make several clutch threes. You want Giannis shooting threes. One of the things I was thinking about during the game was, how phenomenal of an athlete he is. But at the same time, as I was watching the game, I wrote a note to myself in my notes section for the game. How will Giannis's game age? Like once he reaches, a season 29, I mean, season age 29 or age 20, it's age 29 season, it's age 30 season, it's age 33 season. How will his game age? Because it's so reliant upon athleticism. It's so reliant upon being able to dive into the paint. Will he ever develop, that steady jump shot? And of course, as soon as I'm writing that in my notes, he hits two clutch threes, and that helps, Milwaukee win a game that they probably didn't have any business winning because he has seven turnovers. The other thing that really stood out to me tonight, which is a glimpse into the Knicks' future, something that we will probably not have to contend with, is a game where Mitch has to really defend the perimeter. Milwaukee is one of those fascinating teams where their roster construction, when they're really clicking, it's a roster that makes a lot of sense. So they have a five who really has a prominent presence down low in the paint. But in terms on the offensive end, he pulls your defensive anchor. He pulls a Mitch. He pulls a Hartenstein out of the paint and pulls them out to the 3 point line. That I think really, really hurt the Knicks tonight because that means that there are fewer rebound opportunities in the paint. And that's the difference. If you have two extra rebounds on the defensive end, if Brook Lopez is not making three pointers, that can change the game. And so I think that hopefully next week we'll see a return to the mean, where all of a sudden, because Mitch is not going to be pulled out of the paint as much as he was tonight, we're not going to see someone who typically doesn't shoot well from three hit clutch 3 pointers. Hopefully that's a sign of we might have a better week than we had this week.
Yeah, there's definitely reactions, and I'm not going to say overreactions because yeah, we're passionate and we're seeing some bad basketball from a lot of key Knicks. But let me make this point too, EJ and chat fam. Streets are buzzing, smashing that like button. We hear ride or die, and the New York Knicks were 3-4 last year. EJ and I were here. I think we were talking to Dan Favali of a Bleacher Report. Wrote a Tibbs article. The pitchforks and knives were out, and what ended up happening, we finished with 47 wins. We got back on the saddle, and we got a couple of huge streaks. So this is so early in the season, and it's definitely cause for concern, but we can get right. We can get on huge streaks this season. And what do we we've played 6 games, and we only played 4 preseason games. This is basically extended preseason still. But that said, we need to get Julius right ASAP, and if he continues like this, then the trade rumors are just going to continue, to come later on now. And yep, go ahead.
But that's my concern because we were here last year, and it was the Dan Favali interview that we did, where it was like fire Tibbs, and we need to start thinking about trading Julius. Here's the issue, and this is like the funny thing, is we're in this weird perpetual dance with Julius of we want to trade him when his value tends to be a little bit more depressed. And that's the weird thing. Like and count me among one of these people, and like I think this is now my third season with Knicks Buzz, where I've had moments where I'm like, maybe it's time to trade him. But the issue is that particularly with how the Harden trade has helped reset the market, we have to be careful when we start having those conversations because almost always we have these conversations about trading Julius when he's gone 3 for 15 or he's gone 7 for 21. And guys, again, there's 7,423 podcasts. I'm sure there's a GM in Minnesota who's cleaned in onto like Julius's stats and realizing, hey, if you want to trade for Cat, that means there's an additional draft piece that you have to add to this particular trade because of the fact that his value, because Julius's value would be further depressed, as opposed to trading him at the end of last season. So I just had to hop in on there because we're in this weird dance that we've been doing now for 4 years, and it's the same conversation, but it's almost as if we never learned the lesson of it's not just trading the player; it's about when you trade the player.
Yeah, definitely, no doubt about it. We've committed to Julius longer than a lot of organizations would, and that's because of the accolades. When he's bounced back, he's just been able to bounce back like most players don't. He's just the quintessential Jekyll and Hyde player, And the Knicks are a Jackal and Hyde. They're a reflection of their players right now, their coach as well. Now, just getting on Tibbs a little bit, and the front office, we prayed and we hoped that they would add an offensive coordinator to this thing. I don't know, it's got to be the relationship they've got with Leon and him that the reason he's pushed back on that or whatever it is. A lot of dribble handoffs. I want to get your thoughts on that, what you're seeing to start the year. It's okay for Tibbs to be critique like last year and right the ship, but what do we, if we see it all over again for the next year, there's no addition of plays, no evolution, no growing. You want players to grow. Is the coaching situation growing? After timeout plays haven't been great. Jalen Brunson was a one-man wrecking crew tonight. It just so happens that he's great in the isolation. When he's on, and he was getting to the line. But without that, we really are a mid team.
The scary thing about tonight is this is not hyperbole. This is not an exaggeration. Jalen Brunson was literally, not metaphorically, Jalen Brunson was 40% of the Knicks offense tonight. I need us to understand that.
Man.
Jalen Brunson was literally, not figuratively, not metaphorically, Jalen Brunson was 40% of the Knicks offense tonight. And that's because he is a really, really good player, almost great player, without question. And I think many of the commentators on the national level and obviously the local level, the local level has really been preaching that Jalen Brunson should have been an all-star last year. We've heard a little bit of that conversation already out the gate, where the national broadcasting teams have already started discussing that he should be on the all-star team this year. However, what that means with regards to Tibbs is that I look at the offense as there's not a singular cause for the extent to which our offense tends to sputter. Is it Tibbs' fault? Yes. But it's also there are behaviors, there are tendencies that some of our players have that contribute to the offensive being stale or the offensive stalling. For example, the Randall handle. We saw that on full display tonight. That is not just a Tibbs thing. And I know that the counter argument to that is, well, Coach Tibbs should discipline him. But that's also the extent to which a player understands, like, hey, maybe this move does not work. Maybe it leads to bad decisions. Or here's another one. We saw several players, and I don't want to be the guy to consistently cite Julius Randle, but the jump in the air, no plan. Hopefully something will break my way. I'm already up. Now I've already landed, and now it leads to a turnover. Those are bad basketball habits. When you have those bad basketball habits and you lose a game by 5, in as much as we can criticize, and we should criticize the coaching, those bad basketball habits are also the responsibility of the individual players as well. Clyde, since the time I've been listening and watching Knicks games, Clyde has always preached, don't jump in the air unless you know what you're about to do. And how many times did we see tonight someone jump in the air, not realize that the play that they thought was going to manifest itself could not manifest itself, and it led to a bad decision. It led to a turnover. So I think that this is the culmination tonight. The offense has been the culmination of, a lack of imagination in terms of Tibbs, a lack of movement, particularly in the fourth quarter, being critically ISO heavy fourth quarter, and some of our key players not being what we need them to be. This is a team that the margins are really slight. We don't have a player like Dame Lillard. We don't have that kind of player. We don't have a Jason Tatum on this squad. So because of that, on any given night, we can lose to a team. We have to be damn near perfect to really win 50 games. And tonight, small mistakes, being stubborn, led to a game that we possibly could have won.
Yeah, we're very rigid. We rely so heavily on Mitchell Robinson's rebounding, Josh Hart's hustle. Those guys are really unsung heroes for the team, because you look at offensively, they're anemic most of the time, but they still help the team some way, somehow. they're still able to be playable because they just hustle and get us extra possession. It's unfortunate, but imagine if those both had a jump shot. We'd be looking at like a Brook Lopez on our team and another guy like a CJ McCollum who can defend and hit shots a little bit better than Josh Hart. So, but yeah, Clyde was a great defensive guy. Salute Joe. Yeah, that's our identity. It's unfortunately, but it always seems to be with the Knicks. It's more one or the other in terms of offense or defense. Offense with the Melo and the stat years. Sometimes a little bit more defense with Tom Thibodeau. Not enough offense. But yeah, the Bucks almost gave this one away. I
They
feel like
wanted
we
to.
really, yeah, like you said, I really feel like we could have stole this one, EJ, and definitely IQ has been a helter-skelter kind of player up and down as well. What did you make of his start to the year tonight? The fact that he wasn't extended, we've had this conversation many times about, the potential for him to look elsewhere or the Knicks to maybe, use him. Donovan Mitchell had a great interview with Joe Varden, the Athletic, close to the Cleveland market. There's been more talk in recent days from former teammates, Joe Ingles, saying Donovan Mitchell will play in the New York market one day.
Yeah, the language there was really interesting. The will play in the New York market was interesting. That was that, as someone I love language. I love, analyzing words and word choices. Particularly in my day job, I look at a lot of political rhetoric. And when you say the New York market, that leaves it open to the other team in the New York market, meaning Brooklyn, the 718
Philly,
team.
I think Philly's
Phil,
going to go for him now too. They've got cap
absolutely.
space and they've
The James Harden trade has had reverberations beyond just the Clippers and Philadelphia. It's a seismic deal that we're going to have to talk about. But with regards to Emmanuel quickly he's in this kind of weird position where he's playing for his next contract, and it requires a bit of maturity to be able to play for yourself, but also play within a team system. I think, though, given our previous conversation, where the Knicks offense is often reliant upon ISO creativity, it's something that we saw tonight. And it's also something that we saw in the Cleveland game. And I wasn't on with the Cleveland game, but there was a point where, you had four players on the floor who didn't have a shot or couldn't produce a shot. And so it actually fed to IQ knowing I'm the guy right now. I'm going to take as many shots as possible. The issue is, though, there are times, as much as we love IQ, he does sometimes take some ill advised shots. And so this is where you see playing for another contract, a lack of offensive creativity or scheming, plus players not necessarily being able to create their own shots. All of those different variables and factors intersecting and sometimes propelling some of IQ's best attributes, but also sometimes propelling some of his worst attributes, like heat check shot. So um, I can understand why the front office is hesitant if they're honest. If the front office is honest, I can understand why they would be hesitant to really ascribe a value to IQ because they may not know what he is on a championship level team.
Yeah, definitely a player. In all my years of following the NBA, you will never know a player. We'll never see a player flourish enough in a bigger role that they may be able to flourish in until they get that opportunity. He'll always be, the reserve guard that needs to come in and get the scoreboard ticking up, and play with under duress, play under pressure, and all of that. And I feel like if he's on another team, let's say hypothetically, he knows every night he can plan that way accordingly. I'm the starter. I can, play a better floor game, get guys involved. It's not as easy as people think, coming in off the bench and just needing to do everything as well. So I really feel like Emmanuel Quickley's value on another team could be higher than the New York Knicks. Not to say it's not high with us. We definitely need him to be a winning team, and he's going to be difficult to replace. But I think, like when you're building a house, and I use this analogy, you're not going to put the carpet down until the roof is finished. The New York Knicks need to upgrade their starting five, right? Paying Emmanuel quickly 120, 100 whatever million that he would want, plus the role that he's looking for, without upgrading a starting five. That's not a championship caliber starting five. To me, that's working in reverse. That's you need to get the starting five right, and then you supplement your bench. I know how fans love Emmanuel Quickly a lot, and I love him too. Appreciate his game and what he does. And if we want to invest in him, I'm okay giving it a look at with starting him at the 2. But if the New York Knicks front office see Emmanuel Quickly as a reserve with this current starting five, to me it would suit the organization better to make an upgrade to the starting five first before paying Emmanuel Quickly his money. What are your thoughts on that?
It's so funny that we're in lockstep here because I was thinking the same thing during the game. I don't get a chance to see the Bucks play often because obviously our focus is the Knicks, and so most of the games I watch are Knicks related or really in particular games like Boston, Philadelphia, and the Heat games, right? The reason why I bring that up is because I spent a lot of time thinking about the Milwaukee Bucks roster construction. If you're a fan of the NBA, not just the Knicks, the way that the Milwaukee Bucks constructed the roster makes a lot of sense. They identified Giannis as their cornerstone, and they built the roster around Giannis. So, like when you look at the acquisition of Dame, Dame made perfect sense to pair next to Giannis. Chris Middleton makes perfect sense paired next to Giannis. Even a Brook Lopez makes perfect sense next to Giannis. You have a shooting five who can spread the floor and leave the lane open for Giannis, who loves to dive into the paint. Same thing with Boston. When you look at Boston, Boston makes perfect sense. For a while, they didn't make sense. We were confused about the Marcus Smart, Jason Tatum, Jalen Brown pairing. But what we're starting to see is Boston has started to round out their roster, and now they have a five in KP that can spread the floor to leave Jason Tatum room to operate. The reason why I bring up those examples is because the New York Knicks are in a weird position where they have not quite identified who their cornerstone player is. And so their roster construction for the past 2 or 3 years has ostensibly been clunky. When we've talked over and over and over again about like, do Julius and RJ pair well together? And then we added Jalen Brunson. It's left us still trying to figure out, wait, does this starting roster make sense? And as we talked about 2 years ago, and we did have this conversation 2 years ago, now you have to start paying extension money to pieces, but within consideration, as you said earlier, do these additional pieces, do these roster spots make sense with respect to our starting units? And that's the piece that we're starting to uncover. I think the front office is starting to say, our starting unit is not championship ready, and we are in a salary capped sport. So we have to get that cornerstone piece first before we can start allocating money to your sixth or seventh man.
Yeah, definitely, man. And I feel like it's a situation where we had multiple draft picks later in the first round, and we're able to get solid talent, better than solid talent. We hit on the Quickly pick for where it was in the draft, and it's looking like we definitely hit with the Quentin Grimes one. Although I feel like he does need to step it up, be more consistent. But for where he was selected, also. But we've talked about missing on those key pieces, guys that maybe do warrant the bag they've got. Devin Vassell is another player that's really hitting with San Antonio. That one hurts, on the Obi deal. Kevin Knox, Frank Ntilikina, missing out on SGA, Desmond Bain, the list goes on, Halliburton. Those guys that are more cornerstone pieces. But RJ Barrett, that's what makes this start to the year a little bit more intriguing in terms of I'm starting to hear more noise where people would love to just get rid of Randle by subtraction and feature RJ Barrett with Brunson more. Those guys do operate a little better without, or maybe a lot better without the clunkiness with Randle in the paint and Mitch in the paint. And we've talked about it before. One guy needs to go out of Randle or Barrett. And so far, Barrett's had a better start to the year. So playing devil's advocate, What is your thoughts on upgrading RJ Barrett's role offensively?
I think it goes back to what you just said, and like I know I sometimes get like skewed when I talk about the history of the organization. Guys, we're still paying for the sins of bad drafts and bad draft picks. I mean, we saw what
Yeah.
just happened with Kevin Knox. I mean, Kevin Knox, we're still paying for that pick, and he may not have been on the roster for the past 2 years, but that miss, we're still chasing the ghost of it. We're still chasing the ghost of Frank Ntilikina. Think about how many moves we made that were connected either explicitly or implicitly to Frank Ntilikina. We made a Dennis Smith Jr. trade. Why? Because at the time, many of us lamented the fact that we didn't select Dennis Smith Jr. And we've been chasing Donovan Mitchell, who was part of that same draft. And so, I know that sometimes we just want to deal with the world of the immediate, where like have a TikTok brain or microwave brain, where it's like I can only think about the last 15 seconds. But this has really been the issue that we've had in the past 7 or 8 years, and we're paying for it now. The Obi draft. Obi was not the right. Not saying he's not going to be a good player or serviceable player, but he wasn't the right player for what we needed at the time. And now we've seen what's happened is that he's no longer on the roster. Um, and here's the piece, and Mark Berman said this about a year ago. He said, you have to hit when you have the right draft. The RJ draft, when we look at it, it's probably going to be one of those weaker drafts when you look at it, that were so extremely top heavy that you can't really criticize the organization and say they should have drafted this person instead of RJ. Well, we were in the number 3 slot. There was Zion, there was Ja, you know,
No one wants to talk about the bad luck. We had the worst
yeah.
record, and we fell down to the third pick. We had the record to select Zion, I believe, but we weren't given the selection.
And then they changed the way that the draft worked the following season. So, part of it is like you have to be bad at the right time, and you have to also have the luck of moving in the right direction in terms of draft lottery positions.
And that's what, yeah, I'll throw it back to you, but that's what people are saying about the Spurs now. I've seen some Knicks fans get complaining that the Spurs get lucked out. The second time they tank, they get the Admiral, and then they get Duncan, and now they get Wemby. Well, maybe you got to think, did they chose the right years to tank? You know,
Yes,
they
yes.
every cat and his dog knew this was a generational talent, Victor Wembanyama.
And that's why we saw the league play out the way that it did. And it wasn't everyone who was up on Wembanyama, 2 years ago. Like the first time I heard his name was on this program, and all of a sudden, like the name started to pick up speed. The name started to pick up steam and pick up steam and pick up steam. But that's part of the issue. You have to be bad for the right draft. RJ, it's not his fault. He might be the third best. I mean, think about it, guys. RJ might be the third best player out of the 2018-2019 draft. That's not bad. It's just that, unfortunately, the 2018-2019 draft was a weaker one because it was so top heavy. And I think that's kind of why, like when we look at the history of the Knicks draft picks, it's had a bearing upon the long term viability of us being a championship team. It's hard to find a team, especially now. Like if you actually think about it, it's very hard to find a team that's in championship contention who does not have a major piece that was not drafted to their team. Almost every single contender, I'll say this more articulately, almost every contender this year has a major contributor that was drafted by that team.
Yep. And man, I'm thinking real deep right now. But what's going to get this organization elevated even more is what the conversations that take place between Tom Thibodeau and Leon Rose, because both sides, in terms of philosophically, Tibbs ain't a draft kind of guy, right? So then, okay, what you're backing yourself into limited options. What are the options? Trade or free agency signing? Well, there are rarely any big free agents change teams anymore. It's always trade. James Harden was able to get his trade. Lillard, Won't be surprised if Donovan Mitchell is traded again before he has the option to decide to come to the Knicks. So with that said, I think the Knicks shot themselves in the foot a little bit, hiring Tibbs too early in terms of, forcing Leon to then, okay, go get me that star. And he's been trying a little bit, but there's been outlandish trade demands. There's been guys that are a bit iffy, not going to put us over the edge. And now we're in a situation where, people are talking about Jalen Duren, 19-year-old, looking like an amazing prospect at such a young age as well. So that goes back to the organization philosophically, like I said, between Leon and Tibbs. Tibbs saying, look, I don't care for the draft. Go get me guys to win right now. And it's kind of limiting the options. Now, we were fortunate to get Jalen Brunson. We had an all-star Julius Randle. But, truthfully, this team needs a lot more to get to that championship level.
A lot more.
A lot more. Bought some solid role players. But, I'd love to get your thoughts on where to from here between Leon and Tibbs and kind of where you see this sort of thing going further down this year and then what's next.
A team, or actually an organization that does any. We talked about this 2 years ago with Mark Berman. It's one of our first times as a team talking to Mark Berman about this. We talked about organizational philosophy, organizational alignment. And if you want to talk about, for example, the Golden State Warriors 6 or 7 years ago, when they were in the height of their dynasty, their dynastic powers, we saw what organizational philosophy and organizational philosophical alignment looks like. We see it in San Antonio. There's a reason why Greg Popovich has been coaching the San Antonio Spurs for over 20 years. There's a reason why Eric Spoelstra has been coaching the Miami Heat for almost 15 years now. It's because these are organizations that have organizational alignment. And one of the first things that we saw, and it was very easy for us to pick up on this, I don't have any contacts in the NBA, but it was easy to read the tea leaves to see that Leon Rose and Scott Perry and whomever else was in that room, along with Tom Thibodeau, they didn't see the same objectives at the same time. There was an alignment in 2018, 2019. And so what does that mean is that Leon Rose has to serve two masters. He's trying to rebuild, but also make a coach who wants to win now very happy. And so this is where we're stuck in this weird catch-22 position where we have some win now pieces like a Julius Randle, but then we also have some young talent like a Quentin Grimes who needs development. So I don't know what this means for our future. And that's really when we keep on coming back to this conversation of who is the guy who's going to be the cornerstone of the organization. You can further debilitate this team's chances of winning if you invest in the wrong cornerstone. There are some options that are available. There's a reason why they're available. It's because their current team realizes this is not the guy we want, and we want to rebuild. So, for example, is Karl Anthony Towns, which seems to be the name that's growing in terms of steam and plausibility, is that the guy we really believe is the person with whom you want to build your franchise? I don't know. And this is the scary place we're in right now, is that aside from this loss tonight and the clamoring that will increase in fervor that Knicks fans will have, make a deal, make a move. We need to move Julius. That's all well and good. But that next move can be a bad move that sets you up for disaster. I'm old enough to remember Scott Layden and his disastrous move after disastrous move after disastrous move, starting with trading Patrick Ewing and getting Glenn Rice and Howard Isley and Shannon Anderson. Each move confounded the next.
Yep. Which is leads me to great segue to a point I want to make about if I'm Leon Rose right now and leaving all the outside acquisitions and just focusing on who we have, you can still move the organization forward by keeping everyone we have, but set things up, set the table for what's next. And what I mean by that is rearrange everyone's roles. Don't give Randall the kind of leeway that in terms of the featureness that he's getting, the offensive touches and that. Start to bring in your Quickleys, your DiVincenzo's, your Grimes and RJ Barrett's, right? Get more of an even shot distribution, and then if Randle pushes back on that and he has further issues, then you're just going to say, hey, like we're just going to spread the ball more. That's our best chance of winning. In terms of Randle's play, we know on nights he can get hot. That's not the issue. It's we're playing into the defense's hands in terms of this play style. We're limited offensively. So what I'm saying is, you if you double down on something that's not working, you're setting your organization back even further. So I'm okay if the Knicks either strip it down, and I know most Knicks fans would be okay too, and I'm okay if we just decide to just go all in, on a player that makes sense on paper to do an addition. But somewhere in the middle is the worst thing possible, guys. Being right in the middle with a talent, with a group of guys that can't get you to a championship, but continuing to just give them 25 shots every night. What does that equal? That equals the Chicago Bulls.
Yo,
that
bro,
equals the Toronto Raptors. Yeah, we don't want to be them. We either want to be really bad, or we want to get this thing moving forward and get younger guys more shots, and then start to phase in the next stage. Is what basically, to summarize it, I think we should start phasing some guys more out of the offense, and we know who they are.
Yo, I just got to give a shout out to the chat. Hey, everyone, smash the like, smash subscribe. Make sure you let someone know that Knicks Buzz is buzzing tonight. This is the channel for intelligent Knicks talk. This is a family-friendly program, but we got to shout you guys out because some of your comments tonight are fire right now. I just wanted to shout out Buzzer Beater, who's a loyal Knicks Buzz fan. Thank you so much for all of your support. But your comment about if you say Scott Layden 3 times fast, you see the devil. That had me cracking up. My boy CT was talking, and I was like, "You can't make me laugh on camera while we're on the show." That was hilarious. So, keep on writing, guys. Keep on writing in the chat. We'll shout you guys out. But to your point, CT, you're right. Like when you said Chicago, that is that's a horrible position to be in. Um, there are children who are about 12, 13 years old who have never seen a good Chicago Bulls team. And this is the team, like when I say the Chicago Bulls, I always default to Michael Jordan and being like upset because he blocked my man Patrick Ewing from having a chance of winning a championship. But because of mismanagement and because of this idea of not wanting to rebuild properly, particularly post Derrick Rose, they've struggled. And it's really about the manner in which they decided to build their roster. This idea of importing talents from other squads who have mileage on their knees, mileage on their legs, an ankle sprain, an injury like when you're signing, and this is the issue, is like when you're signing or trading for players, the salary cap implications, if it's not the right guy, are more devastating than if you draft the wrong guy. Like actually, we can have that argument, like for another show. Is it worse to draft wrong or is it worse to trade wrong? In the instance of Chicago, they signed and traded incorrectly. And so that's the fear I think that CT and I are expressing tonight, is that we don't want the Knicks to do something that will make the situation worse, but they just have to choose a direction.
Yeah, you said it. Yeah, no doubt about it. And I echo your thoughts. Yeah, the chat's buzzing. Appreciate you. Buzzer Beater too. I want to address a question you posed in the last Mark Berman live stream, and the super chat you gave us. Appreciate you as always, man, supporting and being in part of this whole thing in the conversation. A question you asked was regarding Taj Gibson, Buzzer Beater, and Mark had technical difficulties. We weren't able to get that question live, but your boy went back to Mark Berman and asked him straight out, what's the deal with Taj Gibson? He's from Fort Greene, Brooklyn. He's available right now. The Knicks need a power forward. What's the deal with Taj Gibson? Mark Berman's thoughts on that is that based on last stint with the Knicks, and now him and the organization, whether it be Tibbs or someone else, they don't see eye to eye right now. So yeah, that's wanting to go in different directions. So yeah, unfortunately, man, I would love Taj back with this squad. I know he's a bit older, but yeah, we kind of have that need for that role. Um, Another thing, this is one of those nights, but this is just one bad loss, but we're talking about the future of the where we're going, and I want to bring up the point about the roster construction, EJ, back end of the roster specifically, and I know people say, oh, you can't complain about the 12th, 13th, 14th guy. Well, that's how you continue to build as a good organization. Some things don't make sense to me right now, such as waiving Isaiah Roby, Nathan Knight, and not replacing them with any power forwards, but you decide to give Dwayne Washington, Daquan Jeffries, two 6'5" guards who we have a
Mm.
plethora of. They're not going
Ryan
to see any
Arcidiacono.
minutes. Ryan Arcidiacono, and we can never use these two-way spots to develop anyone that actually comes along, like your Toronto's able to do, Miami Heat's able to do. It's been year after year. Kenny Wooten, Lucas Samanic, Brandon Goodwin, all these players, Trey Burke. We thought we would be able to, turn them and their form in the G League into a roster spot. But now we continue to just bring these guys in, waive them for a year, bring another guy in, and rinse and repeat. It's like now we're giving Jacob Toppin a two-way spot as well, and we waived Jalen Martin after giving him 2 years. Like it just seems like it's all over the place with that situation specifically. What do you think about that?
I think it speaks to an organization that, we talked about this years ago. Like it's an organization that I think, and there are a bunch of people on the chat who are going to say it's Tibbs, it's Randall, it's Leon. I think that there are a bunch of factors that are making the organization, the front office, behave the way that it does. I think the first thing that we see is, and I said this last week, this is an organization that's afraid of making mistakes. Like, I think
Yeah,
Leon he's definitely afraid of, he wants to make sure every move is perfect. The issue with that line of thinking is, while you're trying to make every move be perfect, is there are teams that have gotten exponentially better while you make incremental moves. And that's scary. So, where Boston was and where Milwaukee was, where they both were at the end of last season, and where they are at the start of this season, I think we could argue very easily that both squads got exponentially better. Philly, in so much as I thought that they were going to be a disaster this year, that Harden trade is very scary because they've now positioned themselves to be players for a number of the same people that we've been discussing for the Knicks over the past year. They could easily, at this point, with the pieces that they acquired, they've easily positioned themselves to acquire a Zach LaVine. They've easily positioned themselves to acquire, here's the scary one, a Donovan Mitchell. And
a
here's
Siakam.
a Siakam, a Pascal Siakam. And this is the thing that, when you're trying to be too perfect, the league is still going to operate. The sun is still going to still do what it does. The earth will still move. So we have an organization that's afraid sometimes of its own shadow. I think that's in part why we see the media policy. James Dolan does not want negative press. He does not like negative press. He's in an industry. He's in a media environment where there are 7,423 podcasts. That's really, I'm going to keep that. That's going to be my thing. Um, he's in an
Yep,
environment.
they're playing it safe.
They're
You know.
playing it really safe, and they're afraid, because they know, like, the criticism will be exponentially amplified if they make the wrong deal. Um, but the problem with that line of thinking is then you're robbing Peter to pay Paul. And we're in this weird position where, again, it might be harder. Here's the one more thing, and then I'm gonna shut up. The other issue is Jalen Brunson is about to get more expensive. Julius Randle, we have to make a decision soon.
Man, you had to make the night a little more tougher.
It's the reality. Like Jalen Brunson is going to get more expensive within 2 years, and Julius Randle, we're going to have to make a decision. And if we're not going to assign Julius Randle to an extension, you would have missed on several key opportunities to trade him at the height of his value and not at a depressed moment.
Yeah, man. I think the Leon Rose is set the table. Like Tibbs is obviously kept draft picks, and that's their big move. But we're waiting on the move. The whole world knows.
Yeah.
If I had a penny for every time Brian Windhorst said, "Oh, I think the Knicks are gearing up for that big trade. In fact, they can make 2 trades." And if I had a penny for another Nick Pod that put out a Joel Embiid's coming trade rumor or a spider thing, we'd all be wealthy. But we seem to be linked to every single one, and we're making this Legion Hoops and NBA Central accounts a ton of money with all the impressions they get, right? And in the end, what's it going to result in? What do we end up going to use all these draft picks on? Karl Anthony Towns. We didn't want to go all in on Paul George, who that was my preferred guy. If you were going to go on any guy that was risky, Paul George made more sense to me because he's a two-way player. But yeah, I think we can continue to try to hit home runs in the back end of the first round where we're going to draft because we're a decent team. We are solid, but it's not going to be good enough to get difference makers unless really Brunson and Barrett become, the 1 and 2, 1 and 3, and then we can get another guy. Because I think clearly what we've seen so far is that Julius Randle, for as good as he can be on his night, it's far too up and down. It's like it's Jekyll and Hyde.
Yeah, and part of the issue is the reason why there are 7,423 podcasts is because and like the NBA Twitter or the NBA X sites is there's the Knicks are big business. The Knicks are like the Marvel of like if you're part of nerd culture, there are plenty of YouTube channels that are dedicated to breaking down Marvel content. Why? Because it's huge business. And so I think and we try to be the intelligent podcast. We don't try, we
Here's
are.
one for we're the Taylor Swift of the NBA.
We are.
We're just a money making machine.
We absolutely are, guys. Like, and that's the thing. It's like there's a lot of content that's produced. There's no real veracity to it. It's for clicks. And the clicks lead to money and checks. And so the reason why like the Knicks have so many podcasts, yes, we have a ton of fans, but it's because it drives dollars. It drives dollars. All you have to do is attach any name to the Knicks, people are going to click. That makes money. Even if the suggestion is outlandish, guys, we all knew that there was no way. I said this on the podcast 2 weeks ago, and people ripped me for it. There was no conceivable way that Joel Embiid would be traded to the New York Knicks. It just does not make any sense. But if you go on Twitter or X, whichever one you want to call it, of course there are plenty of sites that are aggregating those stories because those stories makes lots of money. Nevertheless, the point of me saying all of this is this. We have to operate out of the realm of reality. Uh, we have to figure out what direction and which direction we want to go because, again, in a salary cap sport, we can't hold on to every single contract. And these contracts are going to explode in terms of how much these players are going to earn. Giannis just signed a contract, guys, that is like $60 million per year. Uh, who knows what Jalen Brunson's average annual value will be for his contract in 2 seasons? So this is the time where you have to start thinking, what is going to be the move of moving us forward? Because again, you have to do it when you can maximize the value of these contracts.
Yeah, man, no doubt about it. And it's been we mentioned the word Scott Layden, and we won't mention it again, I promise. But there's a reason with this front office is they've done a solid job setting the table, but they've definitely made some poor decisions. And but we're definitely in a situation where we can easily go forward from here. You know what I mean? But my concern is there's so much young talent coming up in the NBA. Orlando, Wembanyama looks like a singular dominant force. You know, and I know we all peeped the Scott Perry interview. They didn't quite feel Donovan Mitchell was that singular force to give up Quentin Grimes with RJ, quickly and Obi and draft picks that Danny Ainge wanted, which I can understand. But maybe we are, a little more, a little over cautious with this front office, being that maybe they are planning life past some of these guys like Randle. You know, Randle did change agencies, and I know that was scoffed at the time, and it still might be not much, but it might be something. No one can categorically come in here and say that it's not something, you know.
Yeah,
And you know,
absolutely.
he's a player. He reads the tea leaves. He knows, okay, if I don't play well, what's going to happen with my situation here? You know, I know New York's hungry. I know they're trying to bring in a star. Now, that's not to say that he's absolutely going to get shipped out, but if he plays amazing, he knows he's going to stay. But maybe that was him strategizing, you know, signing big deals, all of that. That's just a point I wanted to make about, this front office maybe planting the seeds for a little retool. You know, they would have to think worst case scenario. What happens if this year doesn't go well?
Yeah, I mean, I can said it. I could not have said it better myself. I mean, I think this is, it's amazing how tonight is really, you know, I think the last three seasons there have been watershed moments. Like there have been moments in the season where we're like, oh boy, this has been a chapter in the Knicks season. So I remember 2 seasons ago when they had that losing streak and you and I were preparing for Tom Thibodeau to be fired. That chapter tends to repeat itself over and over again. But I think this game in particular will be, one of the chapters of this particular Knicks story for this year. Because we're reaching the point where important decisions have to be made, and the timidity with which the front office has approached the question of who is the guy, it's only going to ratchet up. It's only going to increase because, again, now Philadelphia has positioned itself. Orlando is in a great position. Miami is going to want to do something because they missed out on their guy, and they know that in some way, shape, or form they have to reload. We've been saying this the last couple of years. Chicago has to do something. I believe this will be the season where either DeMar DeRozan or Zach LaVine, or perhaps both, will be traded. And likewise, watch out for the Nets. The Nets they're in a great position, especially with Mikal Bridges. They're in a great position to make a sneaky good move that all of a sudden, as Knicks fans, it's going to agitate us and irritate us because we're going to be like, why didn't we think of that? Why couldn't we do that? And so that's the concern now, is that incremental improvement is great, but you have to be judicious in terms of knowing when to put down all the cards and just simply say it's time, even if you have to overpay.
Yeah, definitely, man. And I'm okay with front office and making some mistakes because no one's perfect. And as long as you rectify and you recognize it quickly, like we said with the Chicago Bulls. And look, Minnesota, I don't know if they're going to end up re-upping that trio of Rudy Gobert, Karl Anthony Town. That's the scenario where I don't want the Knicks to continue to double down on something that's not getting us where we need to go, right? It's okay to strip it back. That way you get to the route you want to get to faster. Doubling down on guys that continue to show you who they are. And there's a large sample size on who these guys are now, and Tom Thibodeau included, all of that. Like, a skillful executive is someone that can realize they made a mistake and not continue to double down on it, unlike the Chicago Bulls. Like, we continue to say. But I want to ask you a question about the Knicks being so big in terms of money making. Is that a big factor in terms of we just have to stay relevant because we're raking in the dollars and we just need to put a product out there that is competitive.
Um, I hear this on sports radio all the time. Um, I- and I grew up listening to sports radio. If you're from the New York area, you're probably familiar with Mike and the Mad Dog. You're probably familiar with WFAN. Today, you're probably very familiar with ESPN radio. So people like Michael Kay and the legend Bill Daughtry, who like is one of my heroes. Um, One of the points that's an easy talking point with regards to the NBA and in particular the Knicks is, do they need to be a good team because of the fact that Madison Square Garden sells out all of the time? People are going to pay for the games. They have now the ability to purchase games for $9.99. Is there an interest? Does James Dolan actually have an interest in terms of making the team a championship level team? I think the evidence is there that he wants this to be a championship level team. I think the problem is in basketball, it is very difficult to make a team an instantaneous championship level team. It's not often you get a 2020 LeBron James LA Lakers scenario. It's not often you get a 2010 LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, Chris Bosh championship team. You need you need otherworldly talent in the NBA to win championships. It's the other leagues, the NFL, it's baseball, it's even hockey, where you can have a team that randomly rises through the ranks and wins a championship when it's not supposed to. Um, Basketball doesn't do that, and I think been the issue for the Knicks is that for the past 30 some odd years, we've not either had the right coach, the right star player, or the right management. And you need all three to work to really be in a position to win. I'll finish with this point really quickly. James Dolan and the Knicks in the past 20, 30 years, I'm not a fan of Dolan, and this perhaps will get me banned from going to Madison Square Garden, but I love Knicks Buzz, so it's worth it. Um, James Dolan, to his defense, his salary, I mean, for the most part, he's been willing to always go over the threshold for the Knicks. Um, the issue has been, though, we've not been able to get the player that would put us over the top. And that's the thing with basketball. You need that player. You need KD. You need Steph. You need LeBron. Who's won the last 20 championships?
Handful of difference makers,
Yeah,
generational talents. Yeah, and I
generational
understand
talent.
it. It's tough in a league with 30 teams. And getting those guys aren't easy. And I'm forever grateful we have a Jalen Brunson on this team. And obviously, I've appreciated Randall's efforts. It's been very unique seeing a player ascend, a player that was drafted quite high, but started his career quite slow, bounced around, became All NBA, All Star, set his family up for life. There's bigger things than sport. But just as a fan, riding or dying with the team, orange and blue, it's what we do. It's just we just the critique comes from a good place from me. I want to see this team win that championship. I don't have time for those that are delaying the cause. You know what I mean? In the nicest possible way. But there's been some big things come up on Twitter. But before we hop off, I want to bring it up. Um, Jalen Brunson made some quotes on Randall, courtesy of Steve Popper. I've just pulled this up now. And he says, it happens. It's part of basketball. This dude, he has a great mindset, a great work ethic. He comes in every day, does what he has to do, does his routine and all that stuff. The ball is not going through the hoop right now for him. I tell him every day, I'm with you. We're going to work through this, everything. When I have days I'm not making shots, he says the same to me. It's all right. I mean, he's missing shots, but we're still in the games. He's still contributing in a big way. I'm not going to get into all that stuff, but his heart's still there. He just has to get over this little hump. So that's Brunson coming to his defense. But man, is Twitter going off. Kendrick Perkins on ESPN. I won't bother pulling up the video, but he's saying right now that the New York Knicks got to. He's saying they got to do something with Julius Randle and this damn ball hogging, and
It's
then
gonna come up. It's gonna come up.
yeah, you've got the NBA Central posting his first 5 games of the season and his field goal percentage with a photo of him right now. So, uh, yeah, man, I hope he continues to stay focused, blocks out this outside noise because this could just spiral. Um,
But that's where the intersection of the business of the NBA and the actual sport intersect. It's great money. When the Knicks are great, it's great for ESPN. When the Knicks are horrible, it's great for ESPN because we are impassioned fans and we're going to like we like to torture ourselves. Like on the 7,423 podcast, there are so many different fans who are watching because they need to commiserate. They need to join in a communal experience where they're with other Knicks fans and to deal with the frustration of this loss. Stations like ESPN, Fox Sports, they know they can bank money off of our misery. So what do the pundits do? Like a Kendrick Perkins, how much of the game do you think Kendrick Perkins actually watched? You know,
yeah,
but there's a financial incentive for him to like to join in on the we need to really trade Julius Randle. Okay, thank you, Kendrick. Bless your heart. Let us real Knicks fans really discuss this because we actually watch all 82. Um, but but what we're going to see in the next few days is we're going to see this pylon emerge. What should the Knicks do? Trust me, on Monday's sports radio, after the Giants and Jets are discussed, this will be the big talking point.
yeah, no doubt. And 2-4 ain't a horrible thing. It's just what's coming up. Foreshadowing the future in terms of the Clippers game with Harden's debut. Right, the Knicks do need to really grit out a couple of wins, and then the vibes will be more immaculate. But Buzzer Beater with another super chat. Appreciate you, fam. Says Buzzer Beater says appreciate you following up for the Berman. The question early on with Berman and Taj Gibson. Brunson was fire. Yeah, man. That's lost in tonight too. We haven't discussed that much, but 45 points is just in regulation. Lets you know that this guy, is a stud. He means business, and I always felt good that he was going to rectify that little slump, coming in. So, uh, do you feel like giving any little predictions on some of these games coming up and where we might be?
Let's talk about the next 3 games. So you tell me the next 3 games, and I will tell you if it's a win, if it's a loss, or there aren't any other options. So let's do game by game. So what's next?
Yeah. So we got day off Saturday, day off Sunday, Monday back at MSG against the Clippers. James Harden's debut. Then Tuesday, day off. Wednesday at the Garden again. San Antonio Spurs, Victor Wembanyama. So they're both national games. Going to have a ton of spotlight. And then we have Thursday, Friday, Saturday off. 3 days off after those 2 days. And we finish the week with Charlotte Sunday at MSG again. And then a back-to-back Monday, Boston at Boston. So I've thrown 4 in there just because the last one's back-to-back.
What time is uh, the Clipper game?
So yeah, great question. They're all 7:30 tips except the first of the back-to-back against Charlotte. It's a matinee midday.
Okay, because we know if you're a Knicks fan, if you're true Knicks fans, you know that the Knicks, the past few seasons, almost like the past 5, 6, 7 seasons, Sunday matinees, they tend to be they tend to be really bad. Um, so if the Clipper game, it's hard to imagine, James Harden, national stage, he's been a story. This is a trade. He's probably going to get his first opportunity to really play significant minutes. When James Harden is motivated, he has the ability to be a transformational player. He'll have something to prove, particularly because this is his 15th team in 3 years. That was hyperbole, folks. That was a joke. But it feels like it's been 15 teams. Um, So I don't foresee the Knicks being able to win that game, particularly because if it's Sunday, you don't know if RJ is going to be available. But when we do get to San Antonio, I do think the San Antonio game is going to be rather interesting. Uh, Wembenyana. And by the way, we have to come up with a great nickname for Wembenyana. The internet usually wins. I've been messing around with nicknames. I'm not going to share the one I came up with, but my gosh, this dude's arms, man. He looks like Mr. Fantastic. He looks like the Marvel comic Mr. Fantastic. Those arms are plastic. So I will share the nickname I came up with. He's Plastic Man. There's no way that those arms are real. He's like those dolls that you used to play with as a kid, that just used to be stretched. Like we can just call him Stretch Wembanyama. Um, uh, that game is going to be really hard to call because he's been playing so well. But I can imagine like he gets nicked up in the next couple of days. So let's say it's a win, San Antonio. I think you said Charlotte. Charlotte, for some reason, plays us tough every single year, in almost every single game. So, but I'll say that's a win. And you said Boston. Um, let's say they go 2-2 in the next 4 games.
That's solid. Appreciate you for that, man. Yeah, the Wembanyama one's going to be crazy because yeah, I don't want to underestimate him. I really feel like we can beat the Spurs, but if he's putting up 38 points on the Phoenix Suns, and getting more comfortable every single game. There was a great breakdown from one of our friends of the program, B-Ball Breakdown, in terms of how smart he is as a 19-year-old, in terms of the Spurs, and coached by Pop, were able to get switches every single time. They just pick and roll, switched Wembanyama on the guard, and it was barbecue chicken after that. So I can't wait to see him up against Mitch, up against Randall. I'm going to say, given how down we're going to feel, I'm going to say we're going to pull off a thrilling win against the Clippers. Then I'm going to say we beat the Spurs as well. I'm just going to go that route. I really feel like RJ Barrett, after a bit of rest, get him back, get the vibes, get the hustle feeling good, get the hustle up. Charlotte, on surface it should be a dub, so I'm going to say 3-1 for this next. That's what's going to help get our season back on track. If we don't, it's going to be tricky because yeah, Atlanta, Washington, Charlotte, Minnesota, all on the road after that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Let me ask you a quick question. Um, How do you feel about the championship cup, the NBA Cup? What are your initial thoughts?
Yeah, I thought early impressions are I feel like it's going to be won by a team that's unexpected, and I really feel like it's still not treated seriously. As it's very new. Uh, I feel like the prize money should be a little more. I know they're trying to find ways to get players really feeling it. The trophy itself, we know it's secondary. It doesn't compare anything to the Larry O'Brien. It's something that is still so new. But yeah, I really feel like the innovation side of it, I like it. I like adding something new to compete for. Uh, they've chosen this time because it's football season. They want to build up some hype, get the ratings up, get people over to Vegas. I really feel like the knockout phase is going to be the excitement. What do you feel?
Definitely. Yeah, I think that knockout phase is going to be amazing. I think that a lot of people are, every championship tourney, they had its beginning. Whether it's the NCAA, whether it's the World Series, there was a beginning to it, and there was a novelty to it. I mean, that's literally what the word novelty means. There's a beginning to it. It's new. I think it's cool that the NBA is willing to experiment and to try to add importance to every single game. And so I applaud Adam Silver. I applaud Joe Dumars for trying something because I love basketball. I love the idea of even the courts being unique. Now, Milwaukee's court was kind of, meh. And I'm not looking forward to the Knicks court. I think the Knicks court is going to be way too orange, and it's an orange basketball. So it's really going to be fascinating to see, like, the different shades of orange. But nevertheless, I'm looking forward to that tourney and what happens in Vegas. And maybe, who knows, they get corporate sponsorship and the pool money increases. And maybe, you add different aspects to the prizes, whether it's an automatic playoff berth that Tyrese Halliburton was discussing, if it's additional draft compensation, Maybe like, you get additional salary cap implications, per year. So maybe it's something like that where, you get to spend an additional $10 million on player salaries. There are things that, can eventually improve with the tourney. So, it's a great time. So,
Yeah,
um,
what about adding some individual player award stats? You know, MVP of the cup, and getting guys like high profile guys to compete hard, because it's another thing on your resume, MVP of the cup, and you get a cool half a milli just from being the MVP. That's going to get every player trying to shoot shots and play hustle hard and get that MVP.
you can even see that happening with like, contracts. I mean, that could be like part of it. Like, how there's all NBA, there's, awards compensations. So imagine if that now is integrated into new contracts. Like, if you become MVP of the cup. So like, we have to be patient with it. There will be evolutions of, there'll be evolutions to this, but I think it's just exciting because we're getting to see. Thank you so much, Buzzer. I appreciate you. Um, this is exciting. We're seeing something in its infancy, and there will definitely be evolution to it. So, let's be patient with it. I think it's good. Don't be surprised, guys. Like if other sports do something similar, like baseball will have to do something similar. Baseball has 162 games, but it's hard to watch 3 hours of baseball or 2 hours and 45 minutes of baseball 162 times during the summer. So you'll probably see similar things in other sports. And that should be something that we should, give each other high fives because it'll be basketball that's leading innovation. I know it's really soccer that's done this, but in the American side of it, it'll be basketball that's leading innovation in the other professional sports.
Yeah, no doubt. As we wrap up, I'll just make one last point about tonight's result, because still a chance that a second team from one of the three groups has to go through as a wild card. And tonight's result was super close, was 5 points the difference. So I believe percentage on losses is going to come back to help elevate the second team, a wild card. So if the Knicks hypothetically beat Miami, Charlotte, Washington, there's still a chance we could get through as the second best team in one of the groups. So I think tonight
Absolutely.
being a close loss might actually help. Um, but yeah, with that said, man, appreciate EJ fam for rocking out with us, and then the chat as well. As always, what else can I say, man? We ride or die through the tough nights and the wins and losses. The streets are still buzzing. And a couple of days rest. Let's get RJ Bully Barrett back. And we'll see how this up and down season start to the year unfolds. EJ, any final thoughts?
Thank you to everyone who's part of the Knicks Buzz family. There's so many different options that you could choose to, share your Knicks fandom with, but you choose to be part of the Knicks Buzz family. So CT and myself, we really, truly appreciate you for rocking with us. We try to be the intelligent Knicks podcast. We are your nerd Knicks fans. We love it. CT, the captain of the ship, is able to get amazing, amazing guests. And there's a recent pod that went up on the channel. Please support what we do. It helps with the algorithm because you already know about the great stuff that's happening here on Knicks Buzz, but there may be a ton of Knicks fans who have no idea the great content that's happening. This is not just some Ricky Dick production. There's a lot of work that goes behind the scenes to ensure that you get the best possible contact on YouTube for free. So do us a favor, if you really respect the work that we're doing here, please send this to someone you know who's a Knicks fan. Forward this to them. Say, there's some great content that's being produced here on Knicks Buzz. We need your support. We appreciate it. And if you keep on rocking with us, we will rock with you. 82 games per year, playoffs, draft, off season. We're here for you. And so just spread love because it's the Knicks way. CT?
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt, man. EJ speaking gospel. And, we ride or die. We're diehards from way back with this organization, this team, and we want to see it win and appreciate the passion. And this is all part of the journey. But, yeah, let's get right. Let's win this cup. Let's win this chip. Let's win everything. And we'll see you on the next one. Peace.